good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful Friday here in Southeast Wisconsin, and this is old Uncle Randy with a special update. And we're going to start a new series based on our show that we just did 2 nights ago and the response that we had to Richard Yang and his very unique look at golf stats. Mr. Yang did an incredible job. And so we're going to start a new series. It's, basically it's going to be about golf, but basically we're going to call it. So that's Statz Crazy. And it's just interesting look at the world of golf stats and historical stats, not the stats that gamblers are looking at, but people might want to tune in if they're venturing down that world. With the upcoming PGA, I thought it would be important just to get to that particular segment of the show that we did this past week with Mr. Yang and a good friend now to the show. And we're going to be now going back and taking a look at Statz Crazy. Well, everybody, as promised, this is the most exciting segment of our Happy Hour Lifestyle show this week. And for the past few months, I've been in conversation with Mr. Richard Yang, who is now on the screen with me. And he is one of the most unique, thoughtful individuals in the world of golf that I ran into over last December. So it's been quite a bit of time. Welcome, Richard. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you are. We met last December, and how inadvertently, when I talk golf, I brought up the name Doug Sanders, and strangely, at the young age that Richard is, he knew all about Doug Sanders in a way most people don't know anything about Doug Sanders. So I said, "So how did you know that?" So the answer to that question, Richard, was you are into statistics. So tell me what you do. I mean, give me just a little bit of background, your thought and your history and your passions for the world of golf.
Well, I mean, my dad is the one that obviously got me into golf and statistics and stuff. And I remember the 1986 Masters, watching that with my dad. And of course, that really got me into golf. The other one that got me into golf was the 1984 U.S. Open, T.C. Chen, the quadruple bogey. Do you remember that one hole where he double hit twice, I think? And he had a 4-shot lead. And the reason that was the case was because that we were interested in that is because my dad was following him because T.C. Chen is Taiwanese, and so is my dad.
Yeah.
And I think Andy North came back to win that one.
I'm sorry?
I think Andy North came back to win that one.
Was it Andy North or was it Jack Nicklaus?
84, no, that's Andy North, because Nicklaus's last US Open was 1980.
There you go. See, it was just a trick question all the way along.
You were testing me.
Yeah, a little bit. 1986, did Mr. Nicklaus win that, possibly?
The Masters, yes. Was it back 929, I think?
I remember. This is again. This is all about you. I know one thing is that the shot on 17 is the shot that was heard around the world, even held in high esteem in the last Masters, because the gentleman that called that shot was retiring, and it was the yes sir shot.
Yes. Vern Lundquist, I think, right?
Yeah, Vern Lundquist. Yep. After I think 40 years, he finally retired. Yeah, some iconic calls. But anyway, so go ahead. Tell us more about your statistics.
Well, I love looking at things in different ways. I've looked at other sports the same way, but golf is definitely the most in-depth because it's unique in the sense that you're not playing against other people directly. You're playing with other people against a course. Where in basketball, you could say, well, the competition wasn't as good or things like that. With golf, I look at it in terms of my statistics in the sense that it's compared to their era, how dominant they were in their era. And that's one thing you can use to compare one person's dominance, like Tiger Woods, with Jack Nicklaus's dominance. Because obviously the equipment's different. The balls are different. So that's what I basically try to compare things, apples to apples, in the sense of one's dominance in their own era. So I look at it in many different ways. Basically, first place, second place in majors, third, fourth, and fifth. I keep track of top 10s, top 20s, cuts made, PGA victories as well. Although, unfortunately, with Live Golf, I think it's diluted the PGA victory worth in that sense.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because it's taken away some of the good players, like John Rahm, Brooks Koepka. Although Koepka really didn't win on the tour that much, he won majors.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have Cameron. Was it Cameron, the one that won the British Open in 22?
Cam Smith?
Cam Smith, yes.
Yeah.
There's three. I think there's 3 or 4 Camerons on tour, so I always get them mixed up.
Well, it's Cam Smith, Cam Young, and
The one that was in the PGA, I mean the Master that did well just recently. I can't remember his last name. But
yeah,
that was
Cam
another
Young,
Cam.
I think. Yeah, Cam Young, and he hasn't won yet on tour. But
Right. He finished second though in that
yeah,
British.
wow, 6 times. Well, I'm not about the British, but I think he's finished 6 times on tour. He's getting close to getting the victory.
So yeah, I mean, and so when Tiger Woods especially came to prominence, I needed a way to kind of compare the dominance in the era in that sense. So I kind of I couldn't just look at the wins and losses, second places, top 5, top 10. I try to look at the whole picture. I also look at things like youngest ever to win majors, youngest ever to win the British, youngest ever to win 3 legs of the major, youngest ever to win 2 legs of the majors, things like that. And also at the other side of the extreme, the oldest to win a major, oldest to win the PGA, oldest to win the British. Many different ways to look at things. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I was always interested in looking at these statistics is Bobby Jones, because he's got that Grand Slam. Of course, it was a different Grand Slam back then as opposed to what it's defined as today. But in my research, it is a great accomplishment, but it's not the same as a Grand Slam, in my esteem, in my view, as it would be normally, because when he won the U.S. Amateur and the British Amateur, he didn't play against all the great pros.
Right.
It's true that the amateurs were much better back then, but if you look at the statistics at all the majors, the pros were still better than most of the amateurs, but there were a lot of great amateurs. So it's hard for me to hold that at the same level as winning professional majors, because in professional majors, you're pretty much playing against all the best players. Whereas Bobby Jones played against all the best players twice and then played against the best amateurs the other 2 times. Not saying that he couldn't have won the majors, because he was pretty dominant. Even in the professional majors, he was very, very dominant. I think he won 7 out of 14 or 18 tries or something like that. So that's pretty amazing still in terms of professional majors. But that, to me, that's a little bit of an asterisk in terms of that U.S. amateur and British amateur. So, like I said, just looking at all these statistics so that I could compare era to era, things like that. And it's just my curiosity also. I've always been fascinated with statistics, and I think golf is one sport that the statistics are kind of comparable in a sense, where basketball, it's really hard to, because of the competition changes that you're playing against.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, the professional golfers today are taking all the statistics that they can find for their own game. I mean, you look up right now, all the statistics in golf. Of course, Scotty Scheffler is #1 in everything except putting. And right, so I mean, he's amazing. And back during the Bobby Jones era, I think they called it the quadrilateral, was it the title that they gave the Grand Slam. And then, the majors have evolved over the years. I mean, Nicklaus in the 1970s, majors were really established by the media, calling golf tournaments majors. And the 2 amateurs that Nicklaus won, he allowed or agreed that they should be taken off his record for majors. So, I mean, when you take a look at that dichotomy of Bobby Jones' 2 majors being amateurs, and then you take a look at Jack's 18, 2 of them wiped away,
Right.
Well, if you would have left him there, then you can't have Tiger Woods coming along. He would have had three,
Three more, right?
so he would have been one close. It's just
And then he also had the three U.S. amateurs before that, junior
right,
amateurs. Yeah, he
right.
had three of those and then three straight U.S. amateurs. But Bobby Jones actually won 6 amateurs, 5 U.S. and 1 British.
Wow.
So,
And he
um,
didn't practice that much. That was amazing.
no, yeah, he didn't play that much. He
Yeah,
he played very little because he was an aspiring lawyer at the time.
right. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Found out uh, watching last year, caught. Of course, he created the golf course where the FedEx is played in Atlanta. And that golf course was designed by a gentleman architect by the name of Tom Bendelow. And I thought, man, that name really rings a bell. Well, that gentleman also did a lot of the architectural golf work in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, including Kishwaukee Country Club in DeKalb. And
Oh, wow.
so you sit there and you look back at that era of golf. There are 6 iconic courses here in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin that
Well, I think Illinois, the most iconic is the Chicago Golf Club, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Although
Yeah.
nobody can play on it, it's pretty exclusive.
Yeah, they're and up and around Lake Geneva, there's one up there that only about 40 members, and I mean it's another one that's very similar, maybe even more restrictive, and but that's just golf. Now, getting back to you now, when you do these statistics, are you doing them by paper and pen or on a computer, or how do you look at your stats? How do you?
I do rely on the internet, so I have to look on the internet. But usually, I try to find a backup information. The thing about golf is sometimes it's tough. Like Corey, was it Middlecoff? Kerry Middlecoff, the dentist. Um, he was credited with 40 wins for quite a while, and then I noticed recently that it was down to 39. They keep changing
Criteria.
the yeah. So sometimes it's hard to do. I know they changed Sam Snead's criteria several times, and he kept complaining about that.
Well, he kept complaining about it, and now you got other people complaining about it for Tiger because
Yes, his would have gone up.
yeah. And then the other one that's really interesting is Ben Hogan's non-US Open that really was the
Yes,
US Open.
that
Yeah,
was essentially the fifth U.S. Open
right,
because of the World War II. It was set up like the U.S. Open, and it was played like the U.S. Open. It's just was I think it was American Hail Open. It was called.
right. Yeah, very
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah, back in '43 or something like that. And he won that one, yes. And people keep saying that he should be given 10 majors because
right.
that was set up as a major. Yeah.
And that really should be changed. And I was doing a lot of deep dive on Hogan for whatever reason the past year or so, but after his bus crash, his world, I mean, in the world of golf was amazing, really
Yes.
incredible, best golf ever.
He was obviously a late bloomer, especially since he played essentially started right with Sam Snead and Byron Nelson, and they started off fast. And Ben Hogan didn't. He won maybe one or two until the late '40s. Then he won three altogether. Then he got into his accident. Surprisingly, though, after the accident, he won six
Yeah,
right after, including the
yeah,
three in 1 year.
yeah. He
Yeah,
was so broke. He had missed cuts early in his career.
yeah.
He had to write back to his club in Texas just to get money to get home from Missouri back to Texas.
Yeah, he was. I know he was friends with Byron Nelson. He caddied with him, and
Yeah,
Byron Nelson tried to be good to him, but Ben Hogan was struggling. I think with a duck hook or something like that, with a hook,
yeah,
a bad
yeah.
hook,
Severe.
and yeah,
Yeah,
during his early career, and he had to learn to eventually straighten that out. But ironically, after the accident, his swing was ideal.
yeah.
He was hitting down the middle. I mean, I
So
think Tiger Woods said he and this other guy, Mo, I forgot his name, from
Mo
Canada.
Norman, Mo Norman.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
supposed to be autistic, they say. Were the
correct.
straightest hitters ever.
Well, I met Mo several times down at the PGA show. I
Yeah.
had a good friend of mine that was a good friend of his, and Mo was very interesting. One day he took us out and he showed us how straight he could hit the ball. First of all, he had to have me hold his $10,000 in cash that he had in his right pocket because you
Pretty,
never
pretty
know.
eccentric.
Yeah, you never know when you might need. But he literally sent somebody out with a duffel bag with his driver, and they were just one hop into the bag. I mean,
Wow.
he was incredible. In fact, it convinced me to play. At the time, they called it natural golf, but what basically Bryson is doing today, it's a very effective way to learn the golf game, a single plane swing.
Mm.
But it's extremely different. Takes about a year to learn.
I've heard stories about that with Mo Norman too, that he would set up a pole and he would be able to hit that pole from a
Yeah,
certain distance. Um, I mean, from what I understand, he's actually good enough to make. He did play in the PGA Tour for a little bit, but not for long. And from what I understand, he should have been able to play on the PGA Tour, except for his, eccentricities and supposedly being autistic. He couldn't handle staying on the tour.
there would be times that he would actually 3 and 4 putt the 18th green not to win. I mean,
Wow. Oh,
he didn't want the fall draw that went with it.
yeah.
He'd sleep in his car at the PGA show.
Yeah.
This is back in, I would say, I've been to the PGA show in Orlando for about 36 years. This would be back in, I think, the late 90s that he showed up a couple of years, and spending time with him fills up your day. I mean, the autistic, he's just interesting. It's amazing to watch him hit a golf ball, though. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I have an autistic son, so I kind of know that aspect of,
Yeah.
how that can affect someone. But yeah, it would be. I would love to watch Mo, uh, and Ben Hogan is my dream foursome. And these are my four favorite players. Although it's been tainted a little bit because one of my dream foursome was Phil Mickelson, but it was Phil Mickelson, Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan, and Nick Faldo. I love Nick Faldo. His swing was. He had a great swing, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Before he was known as Alfoldo, then Ledbetter helped him with the swing to become, the clutch Nick
There
Faldo.
is a whole, I'm not going to go into it right now, but that whole era of Nick Faldo was very interesting. I was in the world of putting, was working for a company that basically Payne Stewart used at the time of winning his U.S. Open and then his demise. And it was, we had quite a conversation with Mr. Faldo on that putter when he was in his putting woes, actually at Olympia Fields when he was at the U.S. Open at that time. So
Which U.S. Open was that? You mean the one he lost in the playoffs?
I can't remember what he did in that. This was a U.S. Open at the Olympia Fields, and I want to say it was back in the 2000.
Oh, that's the one Jim Furyk won.
Yeah, Jim Furyk won it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but during one of the practice rounds, we were standing just talking golf. But anyway, let's get back to what's coming up in about 9 days. We've got the PGA coming up, and with your statistics, I'm sure you've looked at that, and that field now has been added a few of the live players. They only have 16 live players, not 18 this time around.
I think a lot of them qualified out, from other majors, but they let in Tyler Gooch, I think, just because he won the live last year.
Of course, because if he didn't play, there'd be an asterisk, and we have to make sure that the Taylor Gooch asterisk isn't added to any of the majors, even though he could have gone out and qualified. It is something that Art and I talked about here a little bit, and we have our own bent on that. A year ago, Sergio went out and qualified, made it to the U.S. Open, had no problem. But when they asked Taylor here a couple of weeks ago, "Are you going to go qualify?" he just snarled and said he wasn't going to.
I don't know if there's going to be much of an asterisk just because of Taylor. I mean, if let's say John Rahm didn't play, that'd be different.
Well,
but,
no, that was Taylor saying a couple.
Yeah, I know. I remember reading that. Yeah, but there have been majors where people didn't go. Like Phil Mickelson didn't go to a few majors because he went to his daughter's graduation. There's no asterisk to those, right?
No, no, and for Phil, 6 second places do not add up to a first, no matter how hard he tries. But
12 overall seconds, but 6 of the U.S. Open.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
I think it's funny how the golf karma gods have treated Mr. Norman in his life, knowing that later in his life he would sit and try to be this disruptor, and doing a good job of it. But both he and Phil, they've been on this bent. Anyway, enough of that. There are going to be 16 live players in the event. I think with Taylor being there, I think the pressure on him just to make the cut, because he doesn't really perform well in the majors,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so.
He put the pressure on himself, unfortunately, in that sense.
Yeah,
He spotlighted himself, so to speak.
yeah, and you don't want to do that in golf. You just want to,
There's enough pressure as it is.
yeah, you just want to go in and, you know, I played, tried qualifying for many, I didn't have the talent, but for many US Opens, just because I thought that it was there. And 1 year, even 4 months after I popped my Achilles tendon,
Wow. Wow,
uh,
that's impressive.
that was 36 holes walking at Medina and I mean, that was the 36 hole qualifier. So,
Wow.
you know, people can go if they want, if they're passionate. And as I said, I tried many times and people, and that's the thing that gets me today about the Live PGA thing. Is I always ask the question of people that believe in Live the question I ask is, if you were a coach and had a star golfer on your team, and that star golfer says, "Hey coach, paint the path for me to become a professional golfer and the best place to go." Well, there is no path to Live. You know, they just
Right.
steal players. You know, they have all the money has to be put in on the parents and the coaches and the effort and the kid, and then he gets the PGA, and then Live comes in their helicopter and cherry picks, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you know, it's okay to play on a live if you choose to do so, but you have to understand the consequences. You don't really have a path to the majors.
right,
You know, and you knew that going in. And you joined it, and now you want to complain about not having that path, but that choice was made by them to freely go into that.
yeah.
To that.
Let's get
that
back
tour.
to better topics. Who's going to win the PGA?
See,
Let me put one thing before that. Art
who do I want?
Art Strickland and I were talking about, you know, Scotty Scheffler, Meredith is having a baby, could be having it right now.
Yes.
And Scotty is the only one with all his victories that could actually go out and win the Grand Slam this year. Okay. I mean, he could win the 4 majors because
right.
he's won the
The
Masters.
calendar year Grand Slam, right?
Yeah. So that has got to be weighing on him because he's playing this great golf and he's such a great guy. You just think in his head, he doesn't really care, but he probably does care, but people care and everybody cares, you know,
Yeah.
come on, Meredith, let's have that baby and I'll be home in a week, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But with him not being in he hasn't withdrawn. I mean, he's still in the event. So that being said, and the 50-50 chance he might or might not be there, you're on now. Tell me that.
Yeah. I've got to say Scotty Scheffler has to be the obvious favorite, especially the way he's been playing. Who I would love to see Jordan Spieth complete his career Grand Slam.
Right.
Although I think this is his 7th or 8th try, and in my research of statistics, of the 5 people that have the career Grand Slam, 3 of them completed it on the first try, and the other 2 completed it on the 3rd try. Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player completed on the 3rd. Nobody's ever completed the career Grand Slam after the 3rd try. And
wow.
Jordan Spieth is like 7th try already or so. So statistically, it goes against him. I mean, Tom Watson had many tries with the PGA Championship, and he couldn't do that either.
Wow.
Arnold Palmer too had many tries for his career Grand Slam and could not complete. I think his was the PGA also, was it? He didn't win the PGA. Yeah.
And
so
what about Rory? You got Rory in there looking at the
for the Masters, right? Unfortunately, his best one was when he was leading, and then I think he shot an 80. Yeah, unfortunately, and he hasn't been close enough since.
Well, he put one on a guy's back porch that day.
Yeah. And then of course you have Phil Mickelson for the U.S. Open. He's been also close so many times.
Yeah, the 18th that he
hit the tent. Yes,
it's just,
it was the Mickle Slam that he was going for.
That was incredible. But boy, that statistic. Let's go back because that's the one that really woke me up the last time I talked to you. And I love Jordan Spieth, and who doesn't? But if somebody went up to Jordan Spieth and said, "Your chance of completing the Grand Slam based upon Mr. Yang's work, you don't have a chance. Why don't you just stay home?" You know.
Well, you can always buck the trend. Look at Phil Mickelson when he won the PGA Championship. He became the oldest. I don't think anybody at 50 had ever won a major before.
No,
I
Oh,
believe 48 was the oldest, and that might have been Julius Boros.
oh, very
I
good.
think
Yeah,
I think it was 48. But Phil Mickelson did something nobody else had done before.
yeah,
That's what keeps these athletes trying, even though no one's done it before.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
it is so hard. So in your statistic, what are some of the most unique statistics that you've feathered out in as you look at different things?
Well, I looked at also 54 hole leads in the majors and on the regular tour. That's hard. That's hard to find. I have to look at the PGA website. Sometimes I have to look at leaderboards myself. A bunch of leaderboards of the players past. And then I know there's other people that are into statistics that have statistics on that, and I double check their statistics to make sure that they're pretty accurate. And some of them are, um, but the 54 lead record is intriguing to me because it tells me how they handle that pressure. And most of them don't actually win with the 54 hole lead. I think it's like something like 40 some percent on the regular tour, but when it comes to majors, it's down to 30 something percent. And then, so what's interesting is you could see which players do well with the 54 hole lead. Obviously, the best ever was Tiger Woods. I
Yeah,
think he was like 90 something percent. Nicholas was good. Nicholas was great. Palmer was, I can't remember Palmer. I'd have to look it up, but I think he was decent. Um, Surprisingly, Spieth is not good
yeah,
uh, overall. Yeah. I thought maybe when in the beginning of his career, he would be great at it, but then that Masters that he hit in the water, I think on the Amen corner, the par
yeah,
three,
yeah,
twice, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
that kind of traumatized him. It seemed like because he was never the same. He's never won a major since.
yeah.
So
And he blamed
yeah.
that on his nutrition, which I thought was really interesting. The
Oh, really? I didn't
dehydration,
hear that.
yeah, yeah, dehydration and nutrition. He had forgot during that day of play that he forgot to eat and drink. And when he went back and looked at the round and all of a sudden realizing, but
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I could see that. That I can totally see that. Yeah.
so that number 12 is that's where you do is you do like Tiger did. You put it in the left middle and you try to two putt and go from there. But it it's so coming up back to the PGA, if we take a look at trends today, who are you looking at that you would lean to other than Scotty? Let's just assume Scotty's going to be babysitting.
Well, I like Colin Morikawa.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great iron hitter. I would say John Rahm, but it seems to me that his game has fallen a little bit playing on live. And I know he's complaining about a little bit about live, which is unusual. I always liked Brooks Koepka.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hard not.
especially the PGA. He's already won 3, I think.
Right. He has.
Mm.
And he just won last week on Live. And he honestly, I have to give of all people on Live, I have to give him credit because I think he didn't like playing in regular events. He knew he
Right.
could play in these majors, and I think he just went to Live to take the money and work in his game and get his knee in shape.
He reminds me of, in terms of his the play and where he places the importance of Jack Nicklaus. Jack
Right.
Nicklaus didn't like playing on the tour much. He played minimally, but he put the importance on majors. And he even said majors were easier because people fell back because of the pressure. Brooks is the same way.
Yeah.
He's all about the majors, and he pretty much said the same thing. Majors are somewhat easier because people fall back
Yeah,
during the
Jack
majors.
had a beautiful way of eliminating people at the beginning. He'd say, well, these 50 don't have a chance. These 20 think they do,
Yes,
but they
yeah,
don't have a chance. Here's the
yeah,
score I've got to shoot, and I'll take my chances with that. And but in bad weather, he just knew. He and Tom Watson, by the way, Tom Watson won all
British,
those British
yeah,
opens. And we're calling it British, and
right.
it's the Open now.
The Open, right?
Yeah, I had quite a conversation last week with a young pro about British Open and how that got to be. And I basically had to do the research. Even Gary Player called it the British Open, which was interesting.
Hmm.
But
That is interesting.
the American ego got in the way of the Open or we played the US Open, they played the British Open. That was our media once again feeding that fire. because it always was the Open going back to, before
Yeah,
electricity.
right.
And so the history on that was, but I still call it the British Open. It makes sense to me. It's just
Well, it helps us in America at least delineate between U.S. Open and British Open. I mean, we have the Masters, but there is the European Masters.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know if I think they call it the U.S. Masters in Europe.
really.
I believe that's what they call it in Europe. So, and we
Huh.
call their Masters the European Masters. But I mean, they call our Masters U.S. Masters. So it seems logical that we would be calling them the British Open just because we're from here to
Yeah.
delineate between our U.S. Open.
So it'd be interesting with your statistics, because I'm not asking you for any information. We're not doing this for the world of DraftKings or any of the betting,
Right,
parlors.
right, right.
But I did come to the thought, what you just said, statistically after that third round, knowing your statistics going, because you can bet on anything, I guess. I don't do it. I'm not a gambler at all. I don't sit there and, but I guess people can place these immediate bets. But it would be interesting from your perspective, on a Saturday night when somebody's leading, going, nah, he doesn't have a chance. Based on your statistics. Is that how you feel strongly about your statistics?
Well, the thing about golf is it's hard to predict. I mean, I've watched a lot of predictions of majors, and the announcers rarely get it right because it's that hard to predict who's going to win. But I do have a sense, just looking at the statistics in terms of the 54 leads, um, uh, and I also have statistics on majors and all majors and specific majors of biggest blown lead, biggest comeback, things like
Yeah.
that. So when it gets to a certain point, I'm like, well, he has very little chance because he's that far back. He's never done well with the 54-hole lead. So, it gives me some insight. Am I right all the time? No. Hard to predict.
Yeah, and when do you do all your statistics? When do you take the time? I mean, is it on a weekend or a Sunday morning, or what do you?
Well, in terms of updating, I usually try to do it Monday or Tuesday after a tournament, especially the major, because I really break down major statistics. PGA Tour wins, I break it down a little bit, but with the majors, I break it down a lot. I have statistics on most top fives in between major wins, most top fives after last major wins, things like that. Most top fives before first majors. I break it down in a lot of different ways. So after a major, it usually takes me a couple days to break down all those statistics. In terms of regular tour play, it's pretty easy. After one, what I could do it within one day, in an hour or so.
All right, here, this is the idea that I have for next Wednesday. So Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to be having another one of our sessions, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to come up with my top 10 list for the PGA.
Oh, I'll come up with my own too.
You come up with yours, okay? And we will see who finishes with the most money at the end of that week.
Oh, that'd be very interesting. That sounds like fun.
All right. And
Right.
we will reveal those on that Wednesday night, next Wednesday. And we'll be able to have this that show out. That's going to be a lot of fun. We'll just both the field is at this point almost complete. I think they have 2 spots open based upon who might win this week, because there's an opposite tournament down in Myrtle Beach this week, which actually has a really great field.
Hmm.
And then the Wells Fargo, and which is one of the elevated events, which of course has a great field. But you could have down on that the event down in Myrtle Beach, somebody could win down there, 1 or 2 places. There's going to be 156 people playing, and 154 spots are filled. There's still 2 spots open. So once that is done, come Monday or whatever, we'll send out that list. I'll email it to you, and we'll make our selection. 7 o'clock next Wednesday, we will make our predictions.
Sounds like fun.
All right. Anything else you'd like to pearls of wisdom for this week, or any thoughts that you have that you'd like to share?
Not right now. I think I'll save it for next week.
All right. Well, Wednesday next. I really appreciate it, Richard. This is a delight. This is going to be a lot of fun. because if you think that I've been around golf, I'm only 185 years old, only been around it 180 years, so I know that I can't match your statistics, but this is going to be a lot of fun for both of us.
Well, you know more about golf itself than I do. That's for sure.
I don't know. I've been around it for a long time. Hit a lot of golf balls. As I tell everybody, don't get these hands. These are 2 million shots and playing very ineffective golf. So it's life is fun. But anyway, Richard, thank you so much for being with us, and can't wait till next Wednesday. It'll be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good night. Well, I hope you enjoyed that segment. I want to thank Mr. Yang for coming on the other night. But this upcoming next Wednesday, he and I are going to go head to head. Going to pick his 10 favorites and my 10 favorites for the upcoming PGA. But you might want to take a real strong listen to what he had to say, because every week he's going to be coming on with these insights as we go forward in our weekly series. It's going to be called Statz Crazy. And I hope you appreciate the historical perspective that he has. We're not looking at the PGA Tour stats of, green sit and putting and all those things. I might take a look at it. He isn't. He's looking at a different kind of stats over historical periods of time. And it's really fascinating as we continue to unfold this. So we want to thank you, Richard, for being on our show. And I can't wait for next Wednesday when we go head to head, 10 out of 10. You pick 10, I pick 10, and we see who comes up with the highest finishes for the upcoming PGA major tournament next week. Thank you for joining us for the special update, and look to us every week on all our Facebook pages. You can find updates on excitedmindsmedia.com. You can also go to our websites, the distillerychannel.com, liveecostyle.com. We're everywhere. And go to our Roku channel, which is called Excited Minds Media on Roku and Amazon Fire. You guys have a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed this show. Bye-bye.